Hi, and welcome back to today's show. I had a bit of a technical glitch there, so I could hear my microphone not functioning properly. Anyway, welcome back. Sorry about the delay. So, where was I? I was talking about today's show, and the focus of it is actually shedding some light on an aspect of the future of work, particularly through the prism of this role called content moderator. Now, this is quite significant because there's a live case taking place at the moment in the Kenyan courts, and there are 200 very brave ex employees of Facebook and their subcontractor called Sama. And they are suing them for poor working practices and for the non protection of their mental health because they're viewing very violent and toxic information and images that's really soul destroying. So if you're a baby boomer who's thinking of applying for a role as a content moderator, it would be remiss of me not to actually show you the shadow side of technology. As much as we know about the wonderment of AI and its wizardry, there is a shadow side, and the shadow side really does impact upon our humanity. Before I dive into any of that, welcome back if you're one of my regulars. I wasn't here last week because I had such a heavy cold and I lost my voice. My voice is just about returning. So, welcome back. Good to see you. And if you were on earlier, sorry about the initial blip. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Bybreen Samuels, and I help baby boomers reinvent themselves psychologically, practically, and technically so they can thrive in their third act of life. So I want to dive into some of the kind of context and the backstory to this work of content moderator, because you could be a baby boomer who's really keen to either, transfer into the tech sector, but you may be thinking, well, I don't have any tech skills. Is there room for me? And you may see an advert for a content moderator and think, oh, this is fantastic. I should apply for this. But this type of role is not for the faint hearted. And as I said, it would be remiss of me not to bring to your attention the shadow side. And that's exactly what I'm going to do in today's show. So let's just step back for a moment and think about where user generated content actually kicked off. So if we go back to roughly about 2009, 10, 11, when, Facebook was around, it was getting into its stride, but its kind of raison d'etre really was around how can we make the internet more sociable through comments and images and, ideas that we share with our friends and family and colleagues online. And that was the start of user generated content. And it is this user generated content that if you were to apply for the role as a content moderator, you would need to be sifting through all of this. They act as the sort of intermediary between what we in our mind's eye want to share with the world, but is completely inappropriate and very destructive. So they are the frontline workers of the internet that begins to sift through all of this information before we actually see it, receive it, and engage with it. So this case, this first of its kind outside of the US that's taking place in Kenya, has a hearing again on July the 10th. And they're asserting this really poor condition of work because when you're a content moderator, Harvard did this research, and what they found in the research was that content moderators described themselves as sin eaters, which has a real kind of chill to it in terms of the description. They describe themselves as eating the sins, our sins, in terms of our misbehaviors, our misdemeanors, our cruelty, our violence, and any other behavior that falls within the human canon. They are the intermediary. They are the ones that say, this shouldn't go through. But it's very damaging content because, as we know in our everyday lives, once we see something, we can't unsee it. Now, the wonder of artificial intelligence, and we've been sold this idea that, artificial intelligence, will make our lives a lot better. It will cut down and remove repetitive work. It will also, speed up processes. But what it doesn't do is to take into account the human side of working with technology, because artificial intelligence by itself does not actually cater for the nuances that we as ordinary human beings bring to the forefront. So, why is this so challenging? Because this case of the 200 ex employees, what they're asserting is that they're bringing this suit which regards to poor working conditions, and what they're actually applying for is $1.6 billion as a compensation fund. And the compensation fund refers to the terrible working conditions, and then on top of that it refers to this sense of, well, there was such a lack of protection within the world of their work. They're dealing with psychological content that is so soul destroying, but there was no protection actually offered. And then on top of that, they have been released from their work because the intermediary body, which is SAMA, have decided they're no longer going to be in the content moderation business. And so they've released these workers, and yet they are breaching the court order that says until this case is decided, workers should be kept paid. So you can see what's going on here. We're being invited to participate in a job that has negative connotations to the mind, the body, the spirit, because one cannot divorce what one sees and pretend it doesn't exist. Now, what the likes of Facebook and other major tech companies, what they're asserting is, well, these workers, they're paid, a decent wage, they're paid beyond, their market rate, and we provide on-site support. But the workers are challenging this by saying, well, the quality of the support, if it ever existed, was so poor because the counsellors were very passive. They didn't actually input into the lives of these workers and left it to them to decide upon how they're going to navigate this content that could range from, hate speech through to child pornography, through to horrific violence, sex in the most degrading ways. And they've had to navigate this. Now, with what's happening with the rise of automation, you might be thinking, well, AI is there. Why can't it step in and take away this work? Well, here's the rub. Because as powerful as AI is, what it doesn't have and what it lacks are the kind of human nuances. And what I mean by this, these are the nuances where there's a cultural connotation, there's a historical, racial, social, political connotation that comes with the images. That's one thing. And then on the other hand, automation and AI, be it in the form of machine learning, doesn't take away the responsibility. And so therefore there's a hybrid situation. As much as automation is being championed in terms of creating effectiveness and people will lose their jobs and new ones will be provided. Well, here's an example of a new job that is being provided that is so detrimental. And actually, humans are still required to, take notes on the data sets so that the algorithms can work with the data to produce all of this content. And so, us as humans are still very much part and parcel of this process, which is only going to grow exponentially as is already being witnessed. So if you are somebody who's looking to step into the world of content moderation, do your research. It's not for the faint-hearted. And it's not only in places like Kenya, for example, where content moderation has, come to the surface, but this is the first of its kind, because invariably what happens when these large tech companies are faced with challenges, they settle out of court. So we don't really hear anything about it. There's cases in America, for example, and Europe. There was a case in 2019 where we had employees who were content moderators in Germany who were deeply traumatized by this work. And, they were handled behind the scenes. But what's actually happening in Kenya is that if these workers are successful, it's going to have worldwide repercussions for tech companies. And the reason being is because the challenge is very much directed at you owe every single worker within your company a duty of care. And the duty of care is clearly being breached when you're stepping into the world of content moderators. Coming back to this issue of compensation. So think of a tech company like Facebook, who has a spotlight on it at the moment. Now, we have to look at the range of work that takes place within tech companies. But if you're thinking that taking up this type of role will be lucrative, I want you to think again. The reason being is because take the role of a software engineer at a tech company, the starting sort of base salary is going to be around $150,000. On the other hand, the frontline workers of the internet in the form of content moderators, they are paid on average about $28,000, which is pitiful in comparison to A, what they do, but B, the other type of work that takes place within tech companies. And another thing that affects their work is that the quality of the equipment that they are forced to work with is usually out of date. And yet they are being assessed in two ways. One, in terms of productivity. How quickly can content moderators go through all of this equipment? Sorry, not so much equipment, all of the images, but they're using this really poor equipment. And so the tech companies don't make a major investment in terms of upgrading the technology so that it's not as traumatizing. So they're being judged in terms of their productivity, but also did they make the right decision with regards to allowing a particular um, image to go through. So there's a lot riding on the shoulders of these frontline workers who really stand between, the most toxic forms of who we are as humanity, and yet wanting to ensure that our emotional welfare is taken place and taken care of, but it's to their detriment. So that's the reason why, given that there's this live case going forward, literally as I speak, they're going back to court next week, Monday. But if you're thinking of transitioning into the world of technology and you see this role of content moderator, think long, think hard as to whether it is the type of role that you would be able to participate in, because from all accounts, it's not an environment that would enable you to thrive. And, my focus here on my channel and what it is that I do in the world is to enable baby boomers to thrive in their third act of life. So that's what I wanted to share with you. Let me know if you've come across this role. You're going to see more of it if you haven't. And if you are going to apply for it, I'd love to hear some of your reasons as to why, or if you've already worked as a content moderator, I'd love to hear your views. So that's it. I need to go back and rest my voice. Sorry about the earlier blip with the technology. It's a funny thing that, isn't it? But anyway, enjoy the rest of the day. Have a fantastic week, and I will see you again next Sunday here, 3:30 on YouTube. Take care. Bye-bye.